All right, so I did an interview on Anarcast a while back with Hotep Jesus. I hope all of you watched that. It was pretty good. We had some interesting chats. He is new to Anarcho Capitalism, so he's still kind of got that fresh glimmer in his eye about a lot of this stuff, and he's not sort of well versed in the fundamental philosophies. Not that that should ever be an expectation for everyone, but yeah, it was pleasant talking to somebody in his position. He is an entrepreneur, a pretty successful entrepreneur, who is sort of learning to publicly embrace anarchy and anarchism, and he's also a marketing sort of genius. And so we had a discussion about, I think I asked him if there was one thing that he could say to all voluntarists, libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, anarchist types, what would it be? And he basically said, stop using all of the other words. Use anarchist or anarcho-capitalist. Why? He says, marketing. Because if you call yourself something like libertarian, that doesn't get anybody's attention anymore. It doesn't grab anybody. It doesn't make anybody curious. It doesn't even get negative reactions from a lot of people anymore. And I'm putting some words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure this is kind of what he meant. When you call yourself an anarchist, you get attention. You sort of break people out of what they're used to hearing and who they're used to debating with or talking with about these concepts. And he suggested that I put out a tweet on my Twitter. Let me pull this up. I had this pulled up already. I apologize. Not Governor. I'm at Not Governor on Twitter, by the way. If you guys aren't following me, follow along. We have all sorts of interesting stuff I tweet on here, like this butt. Anyway, scrolling down. Okay, where was the tweet? So basically, he said in the middle of the interview, and I tweeted this in real time, he said, you need to tweet, anarcho-capitalism is the only way. Let me find the tweet. Where is it? I apologize, guys. I thought I would be able to pull this up quicker. There it is. Nope, that was the new one. Triggered a lot less people. I apologize. Anyway, so I'm going to keep scrolling while I talk. The tweet says, anarcho-capitalism is the only way. This is something I would have never tweeted previously. Why? Because I knew that it would... I thought that it would not make a difference to anybody. It would stir up a bunch of cranky whiners and complainers that disagreed. We're just going to scroll through my entire Twitter history at this point. This wasn't that long ago, was it? Did I miss it? Anyway, so the short version of the story, I guess, is that the tweet blew up. It was, an order of magnitude more widely shared and engaged with than any tweet I've ever made in the inception of my account. My follower count doubled. It went from like 350 to almost to over 600 now.
Wow.
Where is it? Oh, I'm almost 700 now. So I was at like 350. I'm almost at 700 now. And so I thought that the tweet would just be divisive, would not change anybody's minds, a tweet like that, that it would just generate a lot of hate and debate and squabbling on social media, because that's all social media is somebody says something edgy and everybody else rages about it for days, which doesn't do anything, I thought. But it turns out that I was wrong and he was right, that the post got massive reach in comparison to most of my tweets, and in so doing, it reached a few people that it would not have reached otherwise that were receptive to actual discussion. So, and this is one of the things he said, it sort of rode on the backs of the haters, because don't get me wrong, a lot of people hated that tweet and retweeted it and talked shit about it in their retweets, which was, turns out, a good thing instead of a bad thing. because by them retweeting it and complaining about it and responding to it, they increased its engagement and increased its reach to other people that might have been receptive. So it went out there and found the people that I would not have reached otherwise with a message that started some good conversations. We actually did have some good conversations offline that were started from that tweet. So I was wrong. So it is important to use a term sometimes that will cause controversy, will grab attention, even if a majority of that attention is negative. The negative attention, I guess there is no such thing as bad press, I guess is the word, right? So even the negative attention increases the exposure and reach to people that you would have not have reached otherwise. He says to ignore the people that are just squabbling and haters, because those conversations, we all know those conversations with social media really are a waste of time, so they're easily ignored. And he said something that made me think about them differently as well. Think of them as fuel. Like their hatred is fueling the reach of your post. So in a way, you want to include something in your post that in some way triggers some hate out there because you need some fuel. So
yeah, well, it's interesting because I would have had the same argument as you do, and I still did until you're saying this right now, especially as the Mr. Rogers of voluntarism. Yeah. If I'm trying to talk to my aunt, and that's who I always picture when I think who I'm speaking with, is just a normie aunt, and that's how I'm going to be speaking. If I say anarchy, be like, oh, honey, let's not talk about that nasty stuff. Whereas if I said voluntarism, like, well, what's that? And then we could actually have a conversation. So it's interesting that this came from somebody who is not a computer scientist with 8 years of anarcho capitalism under their belt. Sounds like this is a marketing person that's newer to the humanitarian movement. That's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And so I guess the follow-up to that is that it has changed completely how I view and interact with social media, especially Twitter. And one of the things he talked about in that interview was that these social media companies treat their people, their members, the people that use their users, like they're lab rats in a lab. They experiment on them constantly. They filter what they can see to see how it moves the needles on certain ideas being shared. They censor ideas. They shadow ban certain words and posts and people. They experiment on people. And one of the things he said in that interview was that you need to stop being one of the lab rats being experimented on and realize that it is a lab and it's full of a lot of mindless, bickering rats, and you should use it as if you're one of the scientists running experiments. And so when I make posts previously, I would post something with the intention of actually finding engagement with people. And if they responded in the comments, I would take them seriously, even when they were maybe trolling or maybe being a little bit rude. I would try. It was like I was trying to be I was proselytizing too fervently. I was caring too much. I was one of the rats competing for attention. And so I guess the thing that changed for me is that now I'm using it more like, here is the truth. Bicker about it if you want, guys, but I'm walking away. I'm going to leave this here and I'll come back later. I get less emotionally attached to things that happen on social media now, and that's been a big change. I'm not afraid to say edgy things or say truth things in an edgier way because those posts always perform better, and I've tried other ways to play with that formula to experiment on the lab since that post, and I'm improving. So and it's also a mindset that I think is really healthy. People need to realize that if you're playing the social media game, you're just making yourself a lab rat, and you need to quit that. You stop letting yourself be manipulated. Use the platforms. Don't let the platforms use you. How about that? How about that for a title?
God, that's smart. That's smart. I love new ideas.
Okay. Then I wanted to have a discussion about using anarcho capitalism as when somebody says, "Hey, Shepard, what are your political beliefs? Previously, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this. You say, well, I'm a voluntarist. I think I want to try go ahead.
I actually say voluntarist because I'm not a volunteer necessarily, but I'm voluntary. So I use that. And then the other thing that I've been using more recently is just part of the humanitarian movement.
I mess up. I mess up and say voluntarist instead of voluntarist. I agree. So the thing I want to attempt to convince you of, and this will be a fun discussion, is that I think Hotep might have been right, and that we should be calling ourselves either anarchists or anarcho-capitalists. So the reason is kind of wrapped up in what I've already talked about in terms of reaching people or taking people off guard, getting the attention to then open them up to curiosity or to highlight the people that are a waste of time to spend time on. So I think the term has generally served, like if somebody has all sorts of preconceived notions about anarchy and government and Antifa and communists and all this stuff, the chances that you're going to reach that person are already so little that they should probably be on the lower end of your triage list. And using the word helps sort the triage list, I guess, is one argument that I would make. The second argument I would make is that I think a lot of us use terms like anarcho-capitalist to differentiate ourselves from the commies. We also don't use anarchist by itself very often to differentiate ourselves from the commies. We use words like voluntarist to differentiate ourselves from the anarchists, which everybody knows and thinks are commies. This has allowed the word anarchist to be wholly owned, uncontested, by some of the worst people on the planet. Why the hell should we be making space for the non-anarchists by changing our language when they're the self-contradictory ones abusing the term? And so for me, I'm taking it back. I am an anarchist. They are self-contradictory nonsense. Yeah. So those are my two arguments. What do you have? What do you think?
I think it has a lot to do with gonad size. You have big gonads because you are out there with your real live name. Your job is in a professional industry. You could very possibly not get another partnership, big deal, a potential big thing for you and your family because you're out there saying who you are. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I have small gonads and I am not out. I am still in the closet. And for me and for the people with whom I speak, I choose not to put it all out there and say, my life be damned. I'm just going to do what I believe is right, do what I've calculated, what I think is right, and do what is just all the time. I'm doing the dipping my toes in the water. And so I don't know which is best. I would say that for people with larger gonads, dive in all the way, use the word anarchist, be proud of it, stand on the street corner. That's great. But I would say that for those of us that are a bit more cowardly, it's not going to hurt anything, I don't think, if I continue to say to the neighbor at the grocery store, well, I don't go to the grocery store anymore, but say to the neighbor at the grocery store, no, it's voluntarism. Oh, what is that? And then have a pleasant conversation. So and that would be my, I don't know, argument or my response one. My response number two would be, it kind of depends on who your target market is. And I think any marketing that we do, whether in our businesses or in our humanitarian activism, whatever it is, we have to look at who our audience is. And am I speaking with older conservatives? Am I speaking to younger, non-affiliated folks? Who is it that I'm speaking with? And I think that some people would be open to anarchism. And I guess it would come back to what you said about those that aren't, maybe the older conservative. Okay, you've triaged them out. They get a black toe tag. They're not going to be your your potential buyer anyway. You've gotten rid of them. I just hate to get rid of my clients in my day job by being abrasive or offensive, by saying something that rightly or wrongly has been associated with having mohawks and tattoos and burning cars in the street.
Fair point. How about this? We can have two different strategies. One for in-person conversation, which will take into account the specific needs of the person that you're talking to so as to best reach them, which I guess all of my previous arguments for wanting to use the word voluntarist instead of anarcho capital, because that was my position for years. I think all of that is still would still apply and is still useful. Like if you're talking to somebody and you want to have a chill conversation with them and you think that would be the best strategy, then use that one. But I think social media, there's something about like the usage of social media specifically, that lends itself towards needing a bit of that edginess to amplify the message. And you can still use social media in an anonymous way. Like you're not sort of outing yourself in your day job on your YouTube channel, so you could still use those words if you wanted. What do you think about that?
Yes, and I'm persuaded that it is absolutely right for you. It's absolutely right for Larkin Rose and Keith Knight and Jeffrey Tucker, and it's absolutely right for a large number of activists. I'm not convinced that that's what I want to do, though. I could become persuaded, but I still think that I'm going to have more. It's going to be easier for you to send your aunt when she says, "What's this thing you talk about?" And I heard you were talking about dildos and gonads, and I don't really want to listen to that kind of stuff on your show. And you say, "Well, you know, Aunt Beatrice, here's a good intro to it." And you send Aunt Beatrice your a link to somebody who is saying, "Well, I don't know about anarchy. I don't want to burn cars. I don't like children being hungry or puppies getting kicked. And what we call it is voluntarism. And let me tell you a bit more." And I think that intro, I still think that might be, for the burden that I've chosen to carry, which is the introductory, kinder, gentler. I don't know. I still think that the soft play is the way the guy with small gonads is going to go.
On social media, though?
Well, I don't do stuff. I mean, I guess you call YouTube social media, like on Twitter or the Book of Faces or
that's what I'm talking about. Twitter and
Facebook.
Yeah.
And on those, I'm not that active there because Facebook is going away. The best alternative I found, I put something out there and 3 days later, if I'm lucky, I've gotten one like. So I don't even bother doing it. So I guess I'm not really into social media beyond YouTube and sound. And I'm right now trying to change everything over to Odyssey, kind of make that the primary platform. I'm doing that for my private businesses as well.
And they're going to have live streaming soon, which I am so excited about because we really need a hopefully decentralized, non-censorious live streaming platform.
Yeah. And I looked him up before. I thought, before I put my normie business on there, I'm going to go on and just kind of see a little bit about him. Oh, and the first thing I find is that it was a Google company, or the Google had the website name. And I'm like, well, is this just blah? And so I put something on the CEO's page on his webpage thinking, well, one of his followers is going to respond to me and give me a yes or no. Within an hour, he was on there saying, "Hey, glad you asked. Here's the Twitter link where I talked about it."
Talking about Jeremy?
You don't get that kind. Yeah. And you don't get that kind of response from the guy who owns YouTube or Facebook or whatever. And I'm hopefully in time, Jeremy won't have time to deal with little naysayers like me anyway. But after I saw that, and then I looked it up and he says, "No, I hate Google and I have nothing to do with them and never will." And I'm like, oh, okay, that's solid. And he just seems like such an honest, good guy that I said, yep, I'm moving everything over to ODYSEE.
Yeah, it's a strange spelling, but yeah, Jeremy is an excellent guy. I'm so glad he's the CEO of Library and Odyssey. He is a member of the Free State Project in New Hampshire. He is an an anarcho capitalist. I've interviewed him a couple times now. Once at the last Anarchapulco on this channel. I think I've had him on Anarchast recently too, or maybe that was again here. Yeah, no, I had him on Anarchast, and I challenged him because there was a news story that broke. There was a story that broke about it where they had put in some framework in place to get access to countries like China that censor things in certain ways, and we had a discussion about that. So that was interesting. Yeah, but anyway, Odyssey is where it's at, man. I have my hope for the planet right now is tied up in Odyssey as the primary alternative platform for video and streaming. So, go check it out.
Yeah.
Links to all that. There's a link in the description called disenthrall.me/platforms. On there, you'll find all of the places that we post all of our content, including Odyssey. So go check that out.